Okay, hello everyone. Uh, Welcome to today's workshop. This is the first one of the Lagrange Mars testnet workshop series. Uh, in the previous workshops, you've already learned what is Lagrange, how to participate Lagrange Mars testnet as a space user or a builder. Today, let's talk about the most important and most exciting part of the Lagrange network, the computing provider. In today's workshop, I'll briefly introduce what is computing provider, what a computing provider can provide, how it works, and most importantly, what do you need and how to become a computing provider. Yeah. Now let's step into the doc directly. You can access the document here in the Lagrange website. Here. Okay, a computing provider is also called a CP. It's an individual. By participating in the Lagrange network, computing providers play a vital role in creating a decentralized and efficient ecosystem that fosters innovation, reduces reliance on centralized systems, and offers scalable computational resources to users. So, no matter who you are, if you have spare computing resources, you can always contribute the resources to the network, maintain high quality services, and get reward. For Lagrange Mars testnet, here, all eligible CP can split 500,000 lakh token, and rewards will be distributed based on the GPU hours as a percentage of the total GPU hours. Okay. So, what exactly a CP can do? In the previous workshop, we have already seen some very interesting spaces, such as stable diffusion. But that's just an example. CP can do a lot more than that. Actually, a CP can not only deploy simple CPU or GPU application, but it can also deploy applications with dependencies. For example, if you want to deploy an application with many services related to each other, like database, front-end, back-end, not a problem. You can build all services in a single space and deploy to the one CP. I have one example here. And we can see there are two services. One is HackMD, and it depends on the database, which is the Postgres. So yeah, that's it. And also, currently, you can only run application using at most one GPU on computing provider. For example, when you create or fork a space here, you can choose between a CPU instance without GPU or a GPU instance with only one GPU. But later, we will support like multiple GPUs and even the GPU clusters in the very near future. For example, you will have more options here. Like you can choose between, you can choose the GPU instance with like 4 GPUs, 8 GPUs, or even you can choose between GPU clusters like with hundreds of GPUs. Yeah, hope we can see this feature very soon. Okay. The underlying layer of CP is based on Kubernetes for task scheduling and resource allocation. And CP will report its resources usage to Lagrange Hub. Let's check the provider status. Currently, we have 27 providers up worldwide, and we have 134 deployments in total. And there are like 138 GPU in total, and like none of them are in use. Let's take this CPU, for example, it has 4 GPUs and all of the GPUs are occupied. And we can also see the CPU status, the memory storage here, the state out status is here. Yeah, and once CPU is assigned a task, it will update its task status to the Lagrange hub. So you can see the tasks for the space, like if it's deploying, running, or stopped, or uploading results. Yeah. Okay. Now that we have sufficient understanding of CP, let's go through the deployment process. Before we start the installation, there are some requirements that you should know. First, you need a public IP. So the Lagrange can find you and assign tasks to you. And you also need a wildcard subdomain. You need it to submit your task result so that your result could be seen here, like there. Yeah. And of course, you need a SSL certificate for the HTTPS. And also to get reward from Lagrange Mars testnet, you need at least 1 GPU and at least 8 vCPUs, minimum 50 GB of SSD, 32 GB of memory, and 5 MB bandwidth. And here are the recommend GPUs. Okay. Okay, and since CP is based on Kubernetes, you will need to install Kubernetes first. Before that, you need to install container runtime on each Kubernetes node. There are 2 options, the Docker or container. You can either is fine, you can choose one. For the installation of Docker and container, you can refer to the links here. The next step is optional. You can set up a private Docker registry instead of using Docker Hub. It is highly recommended to install one if you have deployed a Kubernetes cluster with multiple nodes, because it will allow the nodes to pull images within the internet, which will save a lot of time. And the next step is to install Kubernetes itself. So the Kubernetes installation is pretty straightforward now. Like you just need to install the Kubernetes and use Kubernetes to initialize a Kubernetes cluster. I won't go into details about that, and you can refer to the links here. After the Kubernetes cluster is initialized, you will need to install a network add-on. And here we recommend Calico network. You can follow these steps to install Calico network. And after that, you can use kubectl to check the status of all the pods. The output should be similar as this one. And next, if you want to a public IP is difficult to find in China. That's true. And if your computing provider wants to provide GPU resource, then you will need to install the NVIDIA driver and the NVIDIA device plugin for Kubernetes. You can refer to the links here to install them. And again, you can use kubectl to check the NVIDIA device plugin status if it's up and running. And the last part of this section is to install the ingress engines controller. The ingress engines is an ingress controller for Kubernetes using engines as a reverse proxy and load balancer. So basically, it's like engines inside the Kubernetes cluster, and you can use this following command to install it. Okay, then you can use kubectl to check the output under the ingress index this namespace. So there should be three and one is running, and you can also check the service status under ingress index namespace. And remember this port. We will need it later. Okay, the next step is to install and configure the Nginx. Okay, the installation is very easy, just like this. And assume that your domain name is star.example.com. Then you need to create a config file like example.com, and then modify the content of the configuration file. For example, the server name, you input your domain name, and for this tool, you input the locations of your SSL certificate and the key files. And again, the server name is your domain name, and the port of proxy path. So this port should be the internet port corresponding to the ingress Nginx controller service, port 80. So, for example, this one, it should be a random port, like this. This one is 32560. Yeah. And next step is to install the hardware resource exporter. This plugin is developed to collect the node resource constantly, and computing provider will report the results to the Lagrange auction engine to match the space requirements. The installation is pretty easy, and you can check the plugin's status if it's up and running. Okay, the next step is to install the Redis server. Redis is used to store the cache data for jobs, and the data will be cleaned once the space is expired. So the installation is simple, and just start the Redis server. Simple as that. Then we can start to build and configure the computing provider binary file. You can get the code from GitHub. Check out to the Mars testnet branch and use Go to build it. After the binary file is built successfully, we have like one last step before we can boot up the computer provider, the configuration file. Actually, we have received many questions regarding the configuration file, so let's go through all the sections. The first one, the port. This is the port that your CP is listening on, so you can keep it as default, 8085. And the multi-address is your input your public IP and the public port mapped to the 8085. And the domain is, for example, is .example.com. And the Redis, you can choose to set a password for your Redis server, but you can also just keep empty, let be it. And next, the Lagrange server URL. This is the Lagrange API address. You can keep that as default. And for the access token, you can obtain the talk access token here. Click here, and then settings, access token. You can generate a new token. You can check here and copy, and then you can delete it. Okay. And MCS for MCS, because all the files of the space and also the job URL will be uploaded to MCS. So you will need a MCS account and also a bucket. To do that, you can just go to the mergechain.storage, mergechain.storage, and then log in. Okay, so you will need a API key and access token. You can get it here, settings, and create API key. You also need a bucket, so you can just create a bucket here, like the workshop. Yeah, you can input the CPU workshop in the configuration file. And the network is polygon.mainnet. You can keep it as default. And then the file cache path. The cache is for to store the metadata of the job, so it won't take too much space. Okay, and the last one is registry. So if you already set up a private Docker registry, you can input your password, name, username, and server address here. If not, you can just leave it empty. Okay, after everything is well configured, finally we can start the computer provider by execute the binary file. Just execute it. And yeah, that's it. That's how you set up a computing provider. Yeah, I know that computer provider setup is much more complicated than building or using a space. So yeah, and we received a lot of questions about the CP setup during the early stage of the testnet. So we have a step-by-step video here to guide you how to set up
Welcome
a
to this
computing
tutorial
provider on
video,
the
where we'll
Lagrange
walk you through the
test.
process.
Okay. So you guys can check that later. And if you still have questions or problem with the setting up, you can always leave us a message in the Discord channel, and we are very happy to help you. Okay. And we also have a FAQ section, so you can, if you have problems with the setting up, you can check here. For example, you can check if your computer provider is running normally, if your node is up, and like which port you should be mapped. You need 85, 443, and 80 for HTTPS. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it. Do you have any questions? The web UI looks very smoothly. Yeah, that's true. Let's take a look at the provider status skin. Wow. 138 GPUs. Wow. That's remarkable. Okay, I see one question here. Which OS using for running CP? Well, we recommend Ubuntu, but you can also using CentOS. That's not a problem. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions from the chat? Last week total below. Yeah. Yeah, we can see the locations. Okay. Are we expecting any video creation spaces? Sure. I think it will come very soon. Can VPS without GPU not be able to run the test node? Yeah, I think so. You can run a VPS with GPU. You can without GPU. You only contribute your CPU resource, but I think you can join the testnet. But I think without the GPU, you won't be awarded the lag token. Yeah. Questions from the Discord users. What are the prescripts or any prior knowledge required for participants to get the most out of the workshop? Uh, yeah, I think for a computing provider, it needs a lot of knowledge. Like Kubernetes is the basic one. The Linux operating system, the Kubernetes, and also the network like the uh, Nginx and the Redis server. Yeah. Uh, the VPS without GPU cannot get the task to calculate, right? I don't think so, because there are many types of tasks. Some tasks application use GPU. Some tasks do not need a GPU. They only need CPU to run the application. So, uh, like because here when you create a space or focus space, you can choose the instance without a GPU. So that's okay. Yeah. Does forking this makes one eligible for Space Builder reward? I think so. Yeah. Does the computing provider need a virtual private server because my computer specifications are not good? Uh, we have the minimum requirements here. Mhm. Here, like it's only 8 vCPU, 50 GB of SSD, 32 GB of memory, 50 MB of bandwidth. So uh, I think it's not very much for the resources, but if you can also, of course, you can use a VPS to join the testnet. It's not a problem. Are there different types of computing providers, and how does one choose the most suitable type for a particular task or project? Yeah, there are different types of computing providers. Like you have CPU instance, like GPU instance. You can see the configuration here: 8 vCPU, 32 gigabyte of memory with H100 GPU, but this is not available. Here are the available ones. Okay, so you can choose your instance based on your need. Yeah, the same namings, right? Okay, so time is up. I hope you're first. Thank you so much to join today's workshop. I hope you enjoy it. And again, uh, yeah, I know that CP setup is quite hard and very complicated. If you have questions or you have problems, do not hesitate to leave your question in the Discord channel, and we are ready to help you. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much. Bye bye.